Did you know that the tiny island of Tuvalu has more purchasing power than the United States? That's because the official currency of Tuvalu is the Australian dollar, which is pegged 1-to-1 with the US dollar. So, if 1 US dollar equals 1.20 Australian dollars, 1 Tuvaluan dollar equals 1.20 US dollars. So, technically speaking, if I flew to this tiny island right now, I could buy twice as much stuff as I can here. It also helps that the Federal Reserve is seen as one of the most stable and reliable central banks in the world. This means that any time these countries import goods, they have to buy dollars, further increasing demand for the dollar. And finally, when things go bad in the world, investors always flock to the dollar because it's seen as the safest investment out there, just like the Swiss franc or the Japanese yen. The rise of digital currencies and growing geopolitical tensions could very well be the end of its reign. How do you think the dollar will fare in the next decade? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you hope that the US figures it out. And, of course, consider checking out our international channels to watch our videos in other languages and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. These are what we call safe haven currencies. During the 2008 financial crisis, the dollar appreciated against all major currencies. And in 2020, it once again rallied thanks to the pandemic. You see, central banks oversee the issuance and regulation of a nation's currency. The biggest threat to its supremacy is rising U.S. debt. You see, the more debt the U.S. government takes on, the more dollars it needs to pay off that debt. This increases the supply of dollars in the economy, which in turn weakens the value of the dollar. If this trend continues, the dollar will eventually lose its value, rendering it virtually worthless. And that is why the United States is trying to rein in its spending and cut down on its debt. And just like how the Federal Reserve is seen as trustworthy, the dollar is too. You see, when a country becomes too divided, investors start to worrying that the economy may not be able to function properly, leading them to look for other currencies that are less risky. Additionally, new technologies are also threatening the dollar's dominance. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum have shown that it is possible to create a digital currency that is decentralized and not controlled by any government. And countries are starting to take notice. China, for example, has been developing its own digital currency called the digital yuan. And unlike the dollar, the yuan is pegged 1-to-1 with the Chinese currency. This means that investors can avoid using the dollar entirely when trading with China, dealing directly in the yuan instead. And that's a big deal because China is the second largest economy in the world and a major trading partner for many countries. What's worse, China is bypassing SWIFT, the international payment system that allows for the transfer of funds in different currencies, and is instead using its own domestic clearing system, effectively cutting out the dollar entirely. In fact, according to the Bank of International Settlements, the dollar is considered to be the safest investment out there. There is only a 0.22 chance that it will lose more than 5% of its value in a given year. For context, the euro has a 1.46 chance of losing more than 5% in a year. Welcome to my channel. Today, we are going to talk about why the dollar rules the world and which currency could potentially dethrone it. When most people think about money, they think about the green pieces of paper stuffed into their wallet. But when bankers and economists talk about money, they're actually talking about the reserve currency of the world, the US dollar. Since 1971, the US dollar has been the world's leading reserve currency, meaning it is the most widely accepted currency for international transactions and is held by central banks all around the world as part of their foreign exchange reserves. This means that every time you buy something from China, chances are you're paying in dollars. And every time a country wants to diversify its holdings away from euros, they'll pile into dollars instead. And so far, no other currency has come close to competing with it. The euro comes in second place, but it's only 37% as powerful as the mighty dollar. So, why does the dollar have such supreme power? Well, it started back in 1971 when President Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. This meant that the value of the dollar would no longer be tied to the value of gold, but rather set by market forces of supply and demand. This gave the US government more control over the currency and allowed them to manipulate it to suit their economic needs. Shortly after, they struck a deal with the Saudis to tie the price of oil to the US dollar, a move that was dubbed the petrodollar agreement, and this proved to be a masterstroke. All of a sudden, every single country in the entire world had to buy dollars in order to buy oil, the lifeblood of modern economies. This forced everyone to use dollars and hold on to them because you never knew when you'd need to buy some oil. But the petrodollar agreement isn't the only reason why the dollar dominates. What's more, the dollar is used in 80% of all international trade and is the official currency of many countries, including those that don't even use US products. Of course, this doesn't mean that the dollar is invincible. Another major threat to the dollar's supremacy is growing political instability in the United States. So even though the dollar is still the king of currencies today, its future is far from certain.